Three, two, one, boom, we're rolling. Brandon, Michael, Clark, thanks for coming on the podcast, bro.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me on.
So the little running community that follows the show, your name has came up quite a few times. Got to get BMC on, got to get BMC on. So I'm glad you wanted to come on, man, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah. Thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Where do you live down south?
Yeah, I'm just south of Nashville, Tennessee. So about 30
Okay.
minutes south.
What town?
Spring Hill.
Hell yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah.
used to my wife and I used to live in Nashville. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Oh, no.
Yep. So
Nice.
dude, I know a little bit about your background. We were talking before we pressed record, but not as much as I'd like to know. And I think if this goes the way that I'm expecting it to, this podcast and this conversation can end up helping a lot of people. And that's obviously no pressure on you, but I know that you've done some things. You deal with a lot daily, and if you just give us a little bit of background, kind of what you do and your situation at hand, and then we'll just go from there. Test my interview skills.
Yeah, so I'm an e-commerce entrepreneur, first and foremost. Have a couple of different websites and brands that I run. I have a marketing agency, a publishing company, and then I do coaching on the side on all top of that. I've been doing that since, God, 13 years, something like that now. Got into it back in the old school of the internet days before e-commerce got really big and have just kind of exploded with it. And back about, I don't know, 2011, somewhere around there, we got hard and heavy into selling on Amazon, building a supplement brand. And we were doing this as a family business with my in laws and brother in law and my wife. And life was going amazing. I mean, we had more money than I ever thought was possible. Buying a new house, new cars, Mercedes, all that good stuff, like just living on top of the world. The brand was doing about 8 figures, at the time. So, like, really exploded this thing in a short amount of time. And kind of just got into doing a couple other little things on the side, and one of them was bodybuilding. And got up to 250 pounds, pushing a bunch of weights. I was training for some bodybuilding competitions and things like that. And then one day at the gym, my life just kind of changed forever. So I was doing deadlifts one day and felt something just kind of not right, go on in my back. And before, I've always had back issues here and there. I was hard on my body all growing up. Sports, dirt bikes, four wheelers, anything and everything like that. And it would always do this little catching thing. I don't know if anyone has ever experienced this, but kind of bend over and you kind of get stuck. It's kind
Really?
of the best way I can explain it. Yeah. So like if I was picking up, getting something out of the oven, it would kind of drop me to my knees for a minute and then I'd be okay. So I would kind of take a little bit of time off here and there when I had back issues, but it never, amounted to anything massive. Well, this day at the gym, I thought it was the same thing. So I re-racked the weight. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go home. It's kind of towards the end of the workout anyways. And so I went home and, started resting. But every single day that I started to rest, that pain just progressively got worse and worse and worse. So about 2 weeks went by and I was pretty much in the bed most of the time, trying to figure out pain wasn't going anywhere. And I was like, all right, I need to go to the doctor. And at this point, I hated anything to do with hospitals, doctors, anything like that. And yeah, so he's like, all right, you just hurt your back deadlifting. Simple as that. Here's some pills, go home and rest, take it easy for a while. So I did that. And as time went on, the pain continuously to progress and get worse and worse and worse. So about a month goes by, And I was in the bed, 75% of my day at this point. Luckily, I could work from a laptop, anywhere. So I was able to continue on, with my day to day that way. But this all was like in September ish. And so by the end of October, I had to use a cane just to get up and move around. Like that's how bad it progressed. And so that led me on to a journey of, going to a bunch of different doctors. Like this, general physician, he was like, all right, I don't know what else to do. I'm going to do a little MRI and all that. And then he sent me on to another doctor to get a second opinion. And yeah, so here, like we're probably like in November, something like that. And the pain is continuously to get worse and worse and worse. And at this point, it's like taking a toll on my mental health and everything. So I get sent off to another doctor, and it's one of the premier clinics here in Nashville called the Hal Allen Clinic. And really, we're world renowned like surgeons and all this stuff out of this clinic, like really, really good doctors. And so they sent me through the ringer trying to figure out what was going on. And at the time, I didn't have a disc between my L4 and L5. And so it was just bone on bone right there. And they were thinking that could have been the cause of the pain, but they still couldn't figure out, why it was so bad. Because like that shouldn't have been causing the pain to be that bad. So we started doing injections, PT, a million different things to, try to combat that pain and try to give me some kind of relief. And nothing was helping. And every single day, this pain was just slowly getting worse and worse and worse. So after a couple of months with them, they threw in the towel. They're like, we can't figure it out. We really don't want to do surgery. That's kind of the only option you have left. And, they probably put a couple hundred injections in my back over those course of the months, from, steroids to facet blocks to all kinds of different things. And every one was, every time they put one in my back, it was like 4 to 5 shots at once. Because they'd have to go in, put numbing medication, go put in highlighter fluid, essentially, so they can see what else, they were doing in there. And then they would start doing all the medications and numb stuff. And so, once they threw in the towel, they sent me to a neurologist. And he started doing a bunch of testing and stuff like that. Tested me for MS. A couple of different cancers and stuff, like just because of some of the symptoms and stuff they were showing, but a million different things, that they're like trying to figure out what the cause of this was, like Lyme disease, all those different things like that. And they couldn't figure out anything. So at the time they diagnosed me with fibromyalgia, which to me is just kind of I'm not like knocking that diagnosis because a lot of people have that, but to me it's just kind of a we don't know type of answer.
Can you explain what that is?
So fibromyalgia is basically just a chronic pain syndrome that they don't have a cause for, right? So there's no for sure testing, like, you can't do a blood test, you can't do anything else. It's just kind of, hey, we've tried everything else and we don't know what the answer is, so we're going to slap this label on it and send you on your way. And so a lot of people get that diagnosis because doctors just run out of tests to do. And so they diagnosed me with that, the neurologist, and put me on about 150 different pills a week. So a ton of different pain pills, muscle relaxers, sleeping medications, just all kinds of different things. And I was on that for about a month or so, maybe 2 months. And then my livers and kidneys started shutting down because of all the pills. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, kind of done with this. Don't know what else to do. So I was like, I got to go find another doctor. So got to another referral, started going through the whole process again. And every time you go to another doctor, they pretty much have to start over from scratch. So PT is kind of number one because Tennessee has a law they can't do anything without PT first. So every time I went to a doctor, that was, the very first thing I did. And then we would go through all the testing. So from the time I got diagnosed from fibro, that was early 2015, to the end of 2016, I got bounced around 8 different doctors. So I went hard and heavy this year, really trying to or that year, 2015, trying to figure out what the cause was. I was dumping, just all the money I had into my back and into all this, just trying to figure it out. So doctor after doctor after doctor just could not figure out what was causing the pain to this point. And at this point in my life, I'm in the bed 90% of the day. I was walking with a cane, 90% of the time. My whole life was just shit, basically.
How old were you at this point?
All this started when I was 29, so 30, right?
Yeah.
About to be 31, somewhere around there, Again, I was at the top of my life, like loving everything, just got married, all that, and then it just went to shit overnight. And so during that time, man, it was 2015 and 2016 was some of the roughest mental space that I've ever been in. The pain, I would like be brushing my teeth and it would drop me on the bathroom floor and I'd be in tears. Like, just stay on the bathroom floor for hours because I couldn't move to even get up in the bed. We bought our dream property around that time too, which was a 30-acre farm. We're in the middle of 100 acres, everything we ever wanted with that. And I was in the bed, couldn't enjoy it. My wife had to take over everything with that. So, so that, continued on doctor to doctor, and no one could ever figure out the cause. And then started getting into a little bit of Eastern medicine and stuff towards the end of 2015, doing the acupuncture, myofascial releases, Reiki energy healing, just anything. Started going to therapy thinking it was in my head. I was like, something's got to just show some sort of relief in this. Ended up at a chiropractor's office, trying some things there. I was thinking maybe it was, some issues in my hips and stuff and all that. And he's like, dude, you look good. There ain't much I can do. So he sent me to a friend of his, which is Lead Orthopedics here in Nashville. And at the time, they were the doctors for the Nashville Predators and the Tennessee Titans and all that. So $1 million athletes are trusting them, with their bodies. So went and met with this surgeon there. And he's like, dude, you've done everything there is known to man that we have to offer. He's like, well, let's try a few more little things, right? Which ended up just being a ton of more injections and stuff like that. And nothing worked. So he's like, the only thing that you have left to do is maybe do a fusion where you didn't have a disc in that L4, L5. And he's like, I think that would give you about a 60% chance to have relief. And at the time, that was like 100%, right? I mean, it's better than 50-50.
Absolutely.
So I was like, hey, we'll give it a shot. And so in March of 2016, I went in on a Monday afternoon at 1 o'clock and ended up having a post-lateral spinal fusion, which they go in from the back. So they go in from the back and, cleaned out the disc, put some cages in and some 3.5-inch screws and kind of held my back in place. And then Tuesday morning at 7 a.m., they flipped me over and went in through the front. So I had 2 of the hardest, top 5 worst surgeries you can have in under a 24-hour period. And so I was in the hospital for about a week, doing recovery from there. And then once I got set home, the pain just still was getting worse. Ended up, they crossed some wires wrong, had some neuropathy issues and some other issues come from having that, which, kind of sucked. But so I went home and started, doing the recovery and all that. And during that process, my wife had to wake up every 2 hours and basically put another pain pill down my throat. She had to keep a log because she wasn't getting sleep, and she didn't want to, make me OD, just because she would, forget what she gave me and all that. So during that process, after the spinal fusions, it took me about 6 months to actually recover from those surgeries. That was 3-4 days of PT a week for a couple of months after that, and the whole time, just on the pills, and pretty much got addicted to them. Wife almost sent me to rehab because it got so bad. And then, finally it was like, all right, got to get off this stuff, and just kind of dropped them overnight, like quit cold turkey, and really kind of just decided right then and there I had to become my own doctor. But let me back up. Before that, I went back to the doctor, my spinal surgeon, everything looked good and all that. And since he was like, well, it didn't help the pain, so the only thing we can do for you is send you to a long-term pain management clinic. And they gave me two options, and only two options. And one was pain pills for the rest of my life. And the other one was putting a spinal stimulator implant in my back, which is a little device that they implant in the bottom of your lower back. And they put this little lead at the base of your spine and at the top of your spine and your neck. And then you get a little app on your phone, and you can basically electrocute yourself, turn it up as much as you need or turn it down when you need. And it masks the pain signals. So you're just electrocuting yourself all day long. And I was like, man, I know how technology works. Like, phone breaks, computers break. I could drop my phone in the toilet and then I'm stuck with this thing on high, something like that. Mm-hmm. I was like, there ain't no way in hell I'm doing that. And then it was just another surgery and stuff that I really didn't want to avoid. So when they gave me those two options, I was like, all right, from here, now I'm stuck, becoming my own doctor. And then, yeah, it's been kind of a little process from then. But that whole, from the end of 2013 to the middle of 2016, it was just nothing but, hey, I don't have a clue what's causing this. I don't know what to do. We're going to try a few things, but, this ain't going to work. We know it's not going to work. And then as soon as I get done with that, they're like, all right, we're done with you. Go to someone else. So there was no hope, no, anything during that. So the whole time my mental health was just, a free fall decline pretty much.
That's one of the things I wrote down when you were explaining everything is, what a helpless feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What are you dealing with mentally? Like, how do you even stay afloat? You're 30 years old, essentially, coming into the prime of your life. You got life by the balls, essentially.
Yeah.
And this happens, and now you can't even get out of bed. Like, what is going through your freaking mind?
Honestly, there's a lot of suicidal thoughts. Every single day. I don't know how many times I asked my wife just to put me out of my misery. And if I wasn't married, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you. Like, it's just as simple as that. The pain was that bad. I couldn't sit in a car for more than 30 minutes without being in tears. Couldn't do anything, really. And then after the fusions, it was even worse because couldn't even get off the toilet by myself. Couldn't shower, couldn't do anything. And again, we have this beautiful farm and property, and I'm stuck in a little 10 by 10 room or whatever the size room it was, in a bed 23 hours a day. So yeah, mentally it was a dark, dark, dark place. And again, there was no hope, no nothing. So up until 2016, I don't think there was a positive thought that I had, to be honest.
I don't know how you could.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and then you get these two crazy surgeries, in 24 hours, and then I mean nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you're going to the best of the best. Like you're seeing
Mm.
the tip top. I mean, Nashville has really good doctors. I mean, some of the
Yeah.
best in the country, and they don't even have anybody that they can recommend you to.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah. At the end of 2016 or somewhere around there, he did. My last surgeon um, gave me a referral to the Cleveland Clinic, but it was for extreme weight loss too. Like that was his biggest thing that he freaked out about because I went from 250 pounds and I was about 8% body fat when all this started. So I mean, I was, jacked, and I was
Hmm.
pushing way too much weight back then, but I was loving it. I was in a 3X t-shirt, right? And it was just because my shoulders and stuff was so big, I couldn't fit in anything else. I had like a 30-inch waist, but had to wear 38-inch pants because my quads were so big. Things like that. But I got down to, I was like 150 pounds
Were you
when it was all said.
competing?
I was trying to. I was
Yeah.
just getting to that point where I was just about to. So I was kind of building that foundation and all that at the time. But
Were you running a cycle?
no, I was doing a little test,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah. So I was just about to get in all that, mess as
Dang.
well. So
Well,
yeah,
how much were you deadlifting? You probably remember, don't you?
about 400.
That's when you blew your
So
back out.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, I'd incline like 465.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Um, yeah, I was
Good
leg
grief.
pressing. I was leg pressing 1,100 pounds.
Oh.
I mean, it was, yeah, I was big time into it.
Now
But
let's get back. So now
yeah,
you're right. You decided, man. I need to, Dr. Clark.
yeah.
Here we go. So then what?
So, from there, we sold our farm. That was kind of step one, right? We're like, all right, we can't, my wife couldn't handle taking care of everything. Luckily, we had good neighbors and all that. So we moved to basically a retirement community. Went from the middle of 100 acres to 0.16, so I could pretty much touch my neighbor if I did that. And we got this little community, and it started, like I said, becoming my own doctor. So I started getting into all kinds of research and papers and anything that I can find related to chronic pain. Researching all these different conditions and stuff like that. And so when we moved here, I started really working on my mind as well and getting very big into, like kind of positive thinking and stuff like that. And so I just slowly started living my life and focusing on getting like 1% better. Like that became my like mantra from 2017 on. Every single day, I want to do something that I can get better by 1%. And it might not be physical that day, it might be emotional, it might be mental, whatever it is, I just wanted to get 1% better. So, I started, like I said, reading and studying and testing a bunch of little things like cold plunges, saunas, got into float tanks, anything like that. And yeah, I just slowly started building up kind of a list of things that slowly helped me. And then we had some bulldogs, and they passed away, and we got a new dog. And slowly started walking him around the block, and that kind of helped, get a little bit of movement. It started, the neighborhood's real flat. So we would probably walk like a quarter of a mile, and then that would be more than enough for me for the day. And then I'd have to go home and rest for like 3 or 4 days. And then the next week we would go maybe 3/10 of a mile, and then I had to rest for another week. And then, it just kind of slowly progressed like that. So as I was doing that, I started noticing all these like 90-year-old women in our neighborhood. and they would be out here biking or walking or running for hours on day. And so I was still in the bed, 85% of the day in 2017, probably up to 90% of the time. The only time I would get up is either to try to go exercise or to go to another appointment. Or if we had, a family trip or something. And all of those were just horrible on me as well. But yeah, I started seeing these women out here just getting after it. And I was like, if they're out here at 90 years old, because our neighbor is 96, and I'd see her out there. And then the neighbor after that was like 92, and she'd be out there all day long. So that kind of like sparked something in me like, hey, I need to try to start pushing and try to get better. So that kind of started helping, just getting a little bit of movement and stuff like that. But yeah, everything from 2017 was just all working on the mental state and trying to get a little bit of movement so I can feel like there's a little bit of hope and I'm not going to be stuck in my bed the entire time. And this went on for, 3 years pretty much up until 2020, where every day I would wake up and just look at what I can do to, like I said, just to get 1% better. And I had a lot of setbacks in that time too. There were times where the mental side of it, I would have these massive flare ups. Like I said, if I had to travel for Christmas or my father passed away and we had to go to Alaska, that trip, took months on end for me to recover from. And then, you have the mental side of it with, losing your dad and all that as well. So there's a lot of issues like that set me back. But again, I just kept on focusing on getting 1% better the entire time.
What were you seeing was giving you the most relief out of everything? Either the walks or the mental side or any type of mobility? Like, what were you seeing that was being like, okay, hey, maybe we can improve this back situation and get a little bit more movement, man? Like, just any
Yeah.
type of momentum for you mentally and obviously physically. Was there anything that kind of just got your hopes up over that course of 3 years where you're like, I might get through this thing?
Honestly, no. Like, I really didn't have, anything that like gave me hope, until later on. But yeah, a lot of it was cold and hot. Like, cold and heat were the two biggest things that helped. So I got big into cold plunge in like 2016, built my own out of a chest freezer. I stay on heated blankets and kept heat on my back the whole time and keep me loose. And that kind of helped a little bit where I wouldn't be so stiff. Because if I get like super cold or anything, like, your body just tenses up. It just made everything worse. So heat was probably the biggest thing that kept me able to move. And then, stretching and things like that. And I would say one of the biggest things that helped was meditation. I was never big into that stuff before, but in 2016, 2017, I got really, really big into it. And I think that helped a lot because it would calm my mind down and get me to think about something other than the pain.
Yeah.
Because that was the worst thing about it. No matter what I was doing, the pain was always prevalent. So if I'm trying to work, if I was trying to have a conversation, the pain was just too bad that I couldn't concentrate on anything else. So meditation really helped quiet the mind. And I do think that was one of the big first steps that kind of helped. And then really trying to focus on what I can do outside of the pain. So got big into coaching during that time. Like during all this, I was still working and growing a business. And at the end of 2016, let me back up, we left the family business. So another big thing that really, really helped was removing all the stress in my life. So when I would get really stressed out, that would cause another massive flare up. And the emotions would not be in check, so I'd have anger issues and and all that. I wasn't sleeping more than like an hour and a half a night during this whole process. I didn't get my sleep figured out until 2019. So during all this, any little thing would just set me off. And it wasn't that anyone was doing anything bad. It was just I was fucking tired and I was in pain. Like,
Miserable.
yeah, like I was tired of living life at this point. So at the end of 2016, we left the family business, and me and my wife basically had to start completely over with the current businesses we have. So during all of this, while this was going on, I was still having to work and still having to provide and do all this. So that kept me having a little bit of focus and stuff like that. And then, like I said, in 2017, I started getting into coaching and helping other entrepreneurs and stuff like that. And that helped a lot as well because, I can focus on other people and like what they needed. So that gave me kind of a little bit of a mental break as well. But yeah, removing the stress and meditation, I think were the two biggest things mentally that set me on that path. And then on the physical side, like I said, heat and cold, kind of figuring out those little things really helped as well. But yeah, it was just, trying to get better, trying to move a little bit more every single day for the mobility side of it that kind of helped on that.
What was the turning point?
So the turning point didn't come until 2020,
Which is strange.
which is strange. Yeah,
Yeah. That's a weird year to get it turned around.
it really was. It really was. So leading up to that, from 2017 to 2020, my life was the same every day. I was at home. We don't do much. Couldn't travel because of the pain. So I would get up, I would meditate, I would read, I would write, I would do things mentally to kind of keep my body sharp. And then I would, cold plunge. I would buy a sauna, had that in the garage, would kind of do things like that. And then I'd go to work all day. And then I'd work as much as I can. And then I'd sit at home and, not do much. And to be honest, too, another thing that I kind of left out, what helped with the pain a lot is I started using cannabis after all the pain pills.
I was going to mention it. Yeah.
And huge advocate of that. So that got me off every single pill, and I hadn't touched the pain pill. I lie. I've probably touched about 3 or 4. And usually those were more those traveling times. But yeah, I haven't touched, anything like that since 2017. So that's kind of been my lifeline and allowed me to, to actually get my life back a little bit
It,
where I could
smoking, vape, edibles.
smoking, edibles, topicals, tinctures, things like that. Yeah. So huge advocate, for having that legalized because, it basically saved my life. So during those 3 years, that's all I did. Like it was pretty much the same thing. Get up, work, try to do what I can. And then I was going through, more Eastern medicine type of things because there's nothing any doctors here could do for me. So any kind of little woo-woo, little trend, anything that came out, I was trying it. I was always, kind of ahead of the curve when it came to things like that. And continued to push physically. So in like 2018, I was listening to Joe Rogan, as a lot of us probably have, and started listening to like Cam Hanes and people like that. So kind of started getting the discipline stuff in my head that they kind of push with running and things like that. And then in 2019, same thing was, still big into Rogan. I think Goggins sometime was coming out around then. Read a book from Jesse Itzler, The Living with the Seal, during that time. And so all of this stuff that these guys were preaching was starting to sink in, but yet I'm stuck in the bed for 20 plus hours a day, you know? And so I was like, all right, I can't live the life that they're talking about. So in 2018, I tried to run and ran probably like 5 miles and would walk, and that'd be about it. And then 2019, I started getting a little bit, more confident and probably ran 10 miles that year. And I probably biked 15 miles that year and walked, here and there with the dog. And 2020 started ramping it up again. And all of 2020, I probably ran, 40, 50 miles and biked 40 or 50. But in 2020, I was laying in bed on Sunday afternoon. It was 2:30 in the afternoon. And I was a part of Jesse Itzler's coaching program, the Big Ass Calendar Club, during this time. And he had a thing called a Masogi that we were supposed to have, which is you have something, so big on your calendar every year that it defines your year. And so I had no clue what mine was going to be. I've written a book at this point with related to the e-commerce, and that's what a lot of people done. I've, had multiple businesses at this point. So that's another thing that big people do. So really the only thing left for me was something physical. But yet, again, I'm stuck in the bed all the time. So at that Sunday afternoon at 2:30, it was June. It was the first mid-state mile race. And I'm watching Jesse Itzler's Instagram live.
I was too.
Yep. And so you know where I'm going with this. And, we're watching two guys, Chad Wright and Greg Armstrong, battle it out. And first time I've ever really seen that community or what that was about outside of the Barkley marathons that I watched, when I was bedridden one day. And I was so drugged up that, documentary really didn't even sink in at the time. And I watched Greg Armstrong come in and at, 2 seconds left, stumble across the finish line, bust his ass, get up, bust his ass again. And that whistle blew and he got up and went off on another loop. And to me, that was the spark that kind of changed everything. Because I was like, there's people out here who are in perfect health, or what I assume to be perfect health. They're able-bodied, normal-bodied, out there pushing their body to this limit where it's breaking down to what I deal with on a daily life. Because like how he stumbled across is how like a lot of my days will go. That pain would drop me like that. I would get up, it would drop me again, and I would get up and just try to continue on. And so that was like the holy shit moment. Like, I cannot believe people do this. And so from then on, I was like, I got to learn more about this, And so I decided then and there that I was going to make mid-state my Masogi for next year. And, I'm not a runner. Like, I'm in bed, 20 plus hours a day still. So it's kind of stupid for me to even contemplate that and do that. So from July to December, I probably ran, like I said, those 40 miles. Like, it wasn't anything big or, just go out when I could and try to do something, and I'd bike and walk and all this. Wasn't really lifting weights or anything still. The doctor put me on a 40-pound limit. Can't lift more than 40 pounds again. So it was just a bunch of, trying to keep the body a little bit active and like I said, a little bit not as stiff, right? So the end of 2020, Mid-State opened up registration, and I applied, not thinking that I would get in, because I figured with Jesse's influence and Chad's influence that the wait list would be a mile long. And on January 3rd, I got the email that I was in, and I was like, oh shit, I got to start running. And that next day, I went out and I started running, and it was the hardest mile that I've ever ran in my life. And I didn't even, run a whole mile. Probably ran a tenth of a mile, stopped another tenth, and walked half, and then ran the last or whatever. But from then, it's like every day after that, I just started going out there and really pushing my body and my mind. And that took me to a completely different level mentally and physically.
How many miles were you running per week?
So at that, I found a ultra marathon plan online and I just started following it. And it was more walking than running.
Hmm.
But I was like, hey, the plan says do 4 miles. I went out there and did 4 miles. And if it took me 3 hours to do 4 miles, it took me 3 hours to do it. But no matter what, I was like, I'm not going to go home until I finish what this plan says. It's not the smartest thing to do, right? Because those, again, are for, like I say, able bodied people at the time. Is probably good runners, but I was like, hey, this looks good. So I'm just going to follow this. And so I just started following that. And I think by March, I ran my first ultra. I did 26.3 miles. I got that zero point 0.1 over. And I did it at a local park. And it took me like 10 hours that day to do it. Hurt like
Pierce,
hell.
Piercy
Yeah.
Warner?
No, it was Thompson Station in Thompson Station,
Yeah.
Preservation Park.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that is kind of where I started with that.
June comes around. What happens?
So, um, yeah, I was a little bit, at the time feeling a little bit better because I was kind of getting into this pretty heavy. I was probably running 20 to 30 miles a week at this point, still dealing with the pain like no other. But mentally, I was on a whole nother level at this point. I got my life back in a sense because I was out doing more than just laying in bed and working. So mid-state comes around. Some people knew my story at the time, especially like John and Becca and, the few of the locals. Went out there and lasted, I think it was 8 loops and then bombed. So the hill took me out. Every time I started climbing, it was just so much pain on my hips and my back that I would just have to stop and bend over and stretch it out. And, a 20-minute time limit, it just took me out from that. So between that and, neuropathy was getting me too on those downhills that first race. Because every time I would step with my left leg, I was getting electrocuted. It was just this massive electrical pain shooting up. But yeah, lasted 8 loops. Thought I would go a little bit longer. In my head, I was, kind of pissed off in a sense because I thought I could go longer. But, in hindsight, 8 loops for my first ever race. Like, I never even ran a 5K before then. Like, the last time I've ran more than that was back in high school when I was playing sports. So, in hindsight, it was a decent little effort. But,
Did you feel
yeah.
any sense of accomplishment?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely did. Just because with the story and the being the bedridden, for years on end, like that was like, okay, I got my life back. We can do something. I found something that helps me get my mind off the pain, even though it causes more pain, which is kind of a weird thing, but it really helped me keep my mind off the pain more. So yeah, it was a massive sense of accomplishment.
Where do you go from there?
So from there, it's the same. It was focusing on getting 1% better. So I knew that I was nowhere near mentally where I wanted to be. So still to wake up every morning, focusing on the reading, focusing on the meditation, focusing on my writing, which was just a big outlet that I had at the time. Still have it as an outlet, but So, yeah, I'd wake up and again, what can I do to get better every single day? So I'd continue to run. I started getting a little bit more into weightlifting and stuff like that. It was, 20-pound kettlebell, stuff like that, a lot of body weight stuff. But just anything for me to feel like I'm active and I'm moving forward. And that was the biggest thing for me is like, hey, you're moving forward. You're not stuck anymore. You're not just sitting around letting life happen to you. You're kind of grabbing life by the balls and going after it. So just continue to run. And then in September, I did my first 50K. Went down to Georgia and ran Chad Wright's first ever little race. Loved that. Had a ball. Um, the pain wasn't nearly as bad during that as I thought it would be with traveling to Georgia and all this. So that gave me a little bit more hope. And then in December, I ran the Tennessee Mile race and did 71 miles. I did the 40 hour. So just jumped straight into that. And that was a tough, tough race as well because I had my knees kind of blow out during that and had my back just cause all kinds of issues as well. And I was pretty much doing like hour loops on that course. But I wouldn't stop. I just kept going and kept going and kept going. And that gave me an even bigger sense of accomplishment because I didn't let anything stop me during that. No pain, no nothing. Had a massive blister about the size of my fist on the back of my knee from where I had an IT band on it.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was a tough, tough race. But yeah, from there it just continued on to, to more races and harder races. Started kind of the mindset was do more hard shit. And that's what helped me. The harder, race I can find and the more I could push myself, the more it kind of subsided the pain in my mind. And the pain has never gone away. Like from day one, there's not been a single second that I haven't felt the pain. So, it still continues to get worse. It has spread from, my lower back and my hips to my upper back and to everything now because the body is just so tight and tense. I just, can't do anything about it. Even with all the recovery things that I do to help, it goes right back after, a little while. So it was my mindset was like, all right, the harder I can find, the more it's going to help push that, down in my mind. So I just started, looking for the hardest things out there.
You still there, brother?
Yep.
You still there? Okay, sorry, I lost you just for a second.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, so I'm gonna drop this on Monday. Therefore, as people are listening, yesterday would have been the Super Bowl, and I've wanted to progress through your story to, in my personal opinion, kind of what I consider your Super Bowl, which how I originally found out about you was Big L's 200.
Mm.
Can you talk to me and walk the listener through the idea to even go to ultrasignup.com and sign up for that damn thing and then do what you did during those however many damn days it took to get it done?
Yeah. So at the end of 2020, I finished with Tennessee Mile. And in 2021, um, well, no, 2021, that was 2021 I started running. So let me back up. 2020 was when I saw Greg. So at the end of 2021, I did Tennessee Mile. 2022, I started with a race called Black Toe in January, which was a 48-hour race. Another hard little course. We got into some horrible weather that weekend where we got into the negative temps and it was snowing and ice. So all our water froze, all our food froze. So I did 48 hours out there of this, you know, mental training pretty much. And so that again kind of set the bar for, leading into Big Al's. And I was like, I love these longer events, like 40 plus hour events are I was like, I love that. I need more of that in my life. So from there, I started training for the next mid state, ran that, only did 9 loops that year. Again, that's my kryptonite, that race. So with the back, I just can't, do the 20-minute time loop. But after that, we were out and about out there on the course, and John and Becca were talking about their dream was to put a 200-mile race on out there. And as soon as she said that, this is a random Saturday. We're out there, I'm like, sign me up. I didn't even think. I was just like, I'm in. And it's dumb because I haven't ran more than 70 miles. And then again, I have all this pain going on. So I think everybody that was with us at the time was just like, all right, yeah, whatever, dude, right? You're not really going to do that. And so we continue on. I run the next, there's another race in October called Mobile that's local. And it's a good first 100-mile type of race if anyone wants to do it, because there's no time limit. There's more food and stuff at the aid stations that you could ever imagine. And it's a race not for actual racing. It's just people going out there and completing a distance that they want to get. So you go out there, it's not elite runners. It's honestly kind of a lot of overweight people, a lot of people that don't run or have never ran and want to do a marathon distance or whatever. So I went out there and did my first 100 miles, and it took me 38 hours. It was horrible. My ankles, swelled up to the size of grapefruits. It took me a month to recover just from that alone. I had to walk with, 2 canes and stuff at the time, and I just donated my walker 2 weeks prior to that event, which kind of sucked, afterwards. But at that point, that's when I decided, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely doing Big Al's. I do 100. I accomplished this. Now I want something harder. So I think that's when I went and officially signed up for Big Al's. And so that was March of 2023. And leading up to that, again, I did a lot of mental training where I would visualize myself out there. I visualized the start. I visualized, going in the middle of the race, what I would do, how I would rest, kind of everything. And I even visualized coming across the finish line as a winner. And I did that daily. And I would just go out there every time I ran, and I would keep telling myself, I was like, this is my race. I'm going to do this. There's no stopping me. And wholehearted believe that. And so March came along, and
I just want to pause really quick.
yeah,
With really no credibility, all the odds against you. I mean, your only 100-mile you've ever ran is in 38 hours. 24 hours is kind of like the standard, right? Right
yep,
around there. Under 30 is pretty damn good.
yep,
All these back issues, and you're visualizing yourself winning a 200-mile event.
mm-hmm,
Carry on.
yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
And that 100-mile course was on a flat little concrete track. It was a half-a-mile loop that was completely flat pretty much. I mean, maybe 10 feet of elevation gain on it, maybe 20, right? So not a lot. So it's pretty easy. So Big Al's came, and we started on a Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. And the first day was perfect weather, 60 degrees, sunny. So I took off and started in the lead, just took off running and just kind of went after it. And so the first 2 days were kind of a breeze. I mean, the weather was perfect. Just focused on moving and just keep moving. I felt the best I've ever felt ever when I was running, which was surprising. And I think that had a lot to do with the mental side of it. Again, this is my race, so nothing's going to stop us. So For those that don't know, Big Al's is a 200-mile race on a 2-mile loop course. And all in all, if you complete the 200 miles, it's over 55,000 feet of elevation gain and loss for the whole thing. So, again, I'm feeling good for the first, 2 days. And on day 3, I complete the first 100 miles. And I'm feeling top of the world ecstatic. And I come in the corral. I'm the first person to hit 100 out there. I think it was 54 hours, something like that it took. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy this moment. I'm going to bask in what I just accomplished. I'm the first person to run 100 miles out here on this course. I beat, everyone else that was racing at the time to it. I was like, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to have a good meal and I'm going to rest for like 30 minutes and I'll get back out there. So I sat down in the little camping chair in the corral. And within 30 seconds, every bit of pain that I was suppressing just flooded me. And I was in a ball, curled up in that camping chair, crying harder than I've probably ever cried. To the point I was the only one around. And Becca Jones, who was the race director, she was about 40, 50 yards away talking to someone else, heard me crying, and came over and was like, kind of freaked out. She didn't know what to do because she knew my pain. She's a real good friend of mine, but she's never seen that because I've always, hidden that from everybody, pretty much except for my wife. And yeah, she was at a loss. And she's like, dude, just go rest for a while, do whatever you can. So I went into this little house shed shack thing that they have on the property that she converted into kind of a little camp house. Put some mattresses on the floor. Swear she had put some food and stuff at night for us. And I went down and laid on the mattress, and the pain was just progressively getting worse. And again, I was just crying the whole time. And I sat there or laid there for about an hour and a half. And she has a rule where for the 200 people only, if you don't think you can hit 200 miles, when you hit 100, you can stop. And you can get a buckle and you can call it a day and you'll finish with 100 miles. But if you go 101, 102, well, you have to finish the 200 or it's a DNF. Your 100 don't count. And I thought about that and I was like, you know what? I didn't come here to run 100 miles. I came here to run 200 miles and that's what I'm going to do. So I got up and could barely move at this point. And I grabbed my stuff and I just started hitting the trail. Didn't talk to anybody. I just went out there and just did a loop. And it was a long loop. I don't know how long it took me, but longer than any of the other ones did that day or that week. And I was like, I just have to finish. I was like, either that or give me a DNF because I did not come to run 100 miles. I was like, I want that 200 miles. So I did my loop. And when I was coming back through, another guy on the 200 miler, I was talking to him about it. And I was like, I would give anything just to put some heat on my back right now. I think that would save my race. Excuse me. And he's like, I have a heating pad. And I was like, oh, dude. I was like, I'll pay you whatever you want for it. Just let me use it, And so he gave me the heating pad, and I went back in that house, and this was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I laid on that pad, and about 8, 9 o'clock at night, we had some crazy, crazy storms roll in. And around midnight, I'm laying in there, can't sleep because the storms are just so loud. And this house that we're in, I think it's built like 1890. I mean, it's old. Like, this thing is falling apart, barely hanging on. And the house is swaying. Like, I'm laying there watching the house sway left and right. And I'm like, this thing's going to fall down on me. I was like, I'd rather be out there than in here. So about between 12 and 1, I'm like contemplating, do I get up and do I go out in this shit, or do I lay here and take a chance and just let it pass? And again, I was like, you know what? I got to move. I started doing the math. I was like, if I want to get this done, I got to get my ass up and go. And the pain was still just as bad as it was. The heat was helping just a little bit, but I was like, I have to get this done. So I get out, go get my rain gear. It is pouring down. I mean, you can't see in front of you. We probably have like 40-mile-an-hour winds going on at this time. Everybody is off the course and either in their cars or in their tents because it's that bad. And I get my poles and I just start moving. And I don't stop. So the next 2 days are nothing but rain and storms. And I'm out there nonstop, just trucking along. I would come in for, 10, 15 minutes and rest, maybe take a little power nap here and there. My wife would come bring food here and there. But I just kept moving and kept moving and kept moving. And it was getting to the point where it's like, I don't know if I'm going to get this done, right? Because I was still running at some spots, but for the most part, I'm hiking. We're like 150 plus miles in. So I'm having to do more hiking than I really want. And the last night, the weather shifted more than I've ever experienced in my life. So it went from like 40, 35 degrees, and raining like crazy to single digits, 50 plus mile an hour winds. And it was like negative 10 on the wind chill. I mean, it was just horrible, horrible weather. And all the 200 people at this point dropped besides one person. And he was at mile 120 going into Saturday night. So there's no way he was going to finish. And it's the same guy that gave me the heat and pad. But he was like, I'm just not going to quit till the end. And the 100 people were all done. Like I think the last one finished at like 11 o'clock Saturday night. So it was just me and only me on that whole course. And we're supposed to be, there's a cougar rolling around out there as well. So we're supposed to have like music playing at night, especially if we're alone. So, we kind of could scare it off. But with the cold being, it would just drain the batteries on everything. Like nothing would stay charged, my headlamps, the phone, nothing. And so that whole Saturday night, I had to go out there, push through that weather. I would come in and Becca would be in the little shed with heaters and sometimes sleeping, sometimes night. I would check on her and then just keep on going. And it was, that right there was probably the toughest, little section of running I've ever had in my life. And it was all just because of that weather. I was on day 5 of pretty much no sleep. I think I've slept probably 14 hours the whole time. And it was just a bunch of little power naps and stuff like that. The pain was just out of this world. I was hallucinating that last night. Had no clue, couldn't carry a conversation one bit. I remember calling my wife at like 3 in the morning and she said I was just incoherent, just mumbling all kinds of stuff. But yeah, just pushed through that all night long. Never stopped besides jumping in the car for 5 minutes to try to warm up and then, get out and go again. And I left the car running just to have that heat going. So I'd come in, get in for 5 minutes, warm up and go and get out and go. And finished that Sunday morning, 2 hours before cutoff. So it took me 118 hours, finished with 200 miles and 55,000 feet of elevation gain and loss. So pretty much climbed Everest twice in 5 days from sea level. Everyone else does it from base camp, but I did it from fucking sea level. So up and down twice. And I could have honestly, the way I was mentally, I could still be running. If you never took me out of that course and out of that time in my life, Dude, I would have ran 1,000 miles. Like for some reason, there was no stopping me. Like I said, it was more mental visualization. I think that helped me because physically, I was running 35 miles a week training. Like I never ran more than 50 miles a week. So it wasn't a lot of training. It's not like I was out there climbing 50,000, feet a week or anything either. So I was doing kind of just your basic ultra training, but mentally I was running that race 24/7 mentally every single day leading up to it.
What are you telling yourself? Like, what's going through your mind during those storms? And like, I mean, dude, you just ran 100 miles. Like, that's not too bad,
Uh-huh.
especially given your circumstance. But like, I mean, everybody's always telling themselves something when shit gets real tough. What are you telling yourself?
I had three mantras, and I had one was this is my fucking race. I kept telling myself over and over, like this is my race. And then I had another one, move with purpose and make forward progress. And those three things, if I moved with purpose and I made forward progress, I would get it done. Right? It might not have been the fastest time. I didn't know what my time was going to be when I was saying this, but I just knew if I went out there and I moved with purpose, I didn't lollygag around, I just moved at a good clip, that I would get it done. So anytime that I got tired, that I was, getting down mentally or anything, I just kept repeating those three things over and over and over. And I might have gone, 2 hours saying it over and over and over. But if that's what helped me get through that little low moment, then, that's what got me through that low moment. But yeah, it was those three, little mantras that really kept me going the entire time.
Over the course of the past 2 years and some change, I've had the opportunity to talk to and meet some really, really incredible people, and you being one of them now. And I've noticed that the majority of them seem to fight pain with more pain.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what you've done. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out why it works so well. Like it doesn't make any sense on paper, but when you're out there in the thick of it and you're doing these things, I mean, you're fucking broken. Let's just call a spade here.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
you're climbing Mount Everest 2 times, -degree temperatures, no audience, nobody's out there, nobody gives a fuck that you're doing
exactly.
this
Hmm.
besides Brandon Clark. Why do you think you choose to do that?
Yeah, to start, I had a buddy tell me this past weekend that because we were shooting for 100 miles at a race this past weekend, and he said, I'm starting a 100-mile race with a 100 miles race on my body, from the get go. So I want to throw that out there because, you said I'm broken, but the hard things that you do allow the day to day stuff to fall at the wayside. If I could go out there, and in my mind, like that 200 mile, like you said, no one gives a shit I did that but me.
Mm-hmm.
But I could always go back in my life now and pull that out. Goggins has a thing called the cookie jar, if you've ever heard of that,
I
where
have.
you just, yeah, pull out stuff in a cookie jar anytime you need. That's going in my damn cookie jar. Like, that is something where if I'm sitting here right now, like I'm in pain, this pain's nothing compared to that pain I felt out there. So I could always think about that. Well, if I can get through that, I know I can make it on this 4 hour car ride that usually puts me down for 2 days. Like I used to have that where I'd go on a 4 hour car ride to my in laws and wife's families in Mississippi. And so going down for holidays, by the time we got there, it would take me 2 days to recover just from sitting in a car. But now it's like mentally, that doesn't happen anymore, even though the pain's just as bad. But it's like, all right, I know how to control this a lot better. And I think that's what that stuff does. When you go out there and you're forced to continue on, Like if you're at mile 1 and you got to make it to mile 10 before you could even get back to an aid station or to a car, no one's coming to save you. Like you got to find a way to get back out there. If you're off in the woods somewhere, like you just have to find a way to make it back no matter your circumstances. So that type of stuff I think really helps with the day to day, stuff. So it just makes the pain easier, even though in a sense it's not, if that makes any sense.
It does. I
No.
feel like I'd be dismissed if I did not bring this up, but for everything that you've gone through over the past however many years, it sounds like you have a hell of a woman by your side for somebody
Oh,
to
yeah.
stick by you through all of that just pain and suffering and you probably lashing out because you're in so much pain and it's not her fault. She's just the only one there to listen, right? So that can
Yeah.
cause stress. I mean, the amount of stress you guys have probably gone through together. Can you just touch a little bit on that support system from your wife and, just how big of a role she has played throughout, you getting off that gym floor after that freaking deadlift? I mean, from then on out, your life has looked completely different. I'm sure your marriage and relationship has, looked a lot different than it did before that deadlift. Can you touch on that some?
Yeah. I said earlier in the podcast that I wouldn't even be here talking to you without her. And 100% believe that. Like I really think that I would have taken the easy way out, which, I'm glad I didn't in hindsight, but yeah, it's all because of her. I mean, I wouldn't have faulted her one bit if she would have left me. Like I said, I was an asshole with the pain meds, and coming off of that was even worse. You get addicted to that stuff so bad. I didn't know it. She was thinking about putting me in rehab at a time, and they were looking at it like I was, a couple of days away pretty much from going into one. But yeah, she is probably the strongest woman I've ever met because she has her own chronic pain that she deals with. Like she has endometriosis. That's top 20, most painful conditions in the world. So she had surgeries and stuff during this and her own battle the whole time. And she had to put her battle aside because, mine was just taking over our whole life at the time. So, yeah, like I said, she is the strongest woman that I've ever met in my life. And I would nowhere near be the man I am without her. Yeah, I'm more than blessed to have someone like that because I don't know how people do it without that support. Because like I don't have family of my own. So if it wasn't for her, it would have just been me and only me. And I know there's people out there like that, and it's a tough way to live. But having that really allowed me to get my life back and to be here where I am talking to you today.
That's so cool, though. To this day, man, do you have any type of diagnosis? Like, did you ever figure out what the fuck happened?
I did, and it came a couple of months ago. And
No.
actually, yeah, go ahead.
No, no, seriously?
Yeah,
A
yeah,
couple months ago.
and officially yesterday.
Shut up.
But yeah, yeah. So I did Big Al's in March. I had all the confidence in the world. Thought I was going to win mid-state, go into mid-state, bomb again because kryptonite race, and started looking at other races that I could do. And I was like, I really want to do one of these last man standings because I want to figure out what my limit is. And 200 is not my limit. And I know these backyards could go 400 plus miles. I was like, I want to do that. I really want to figure out what my breaking point is on this body. And I'm going to find out. And so I went and did a race called Little Dogs, which is Laz, they have Big Dog World Ultras. That's the world champions. This one is a couple weeks before for people like me who don't belong in the big one. to go get the course ready. We pack it down and do all that for him. And so I went out there and, I don't know, a couple hours into the race, I take a hard fall and get hurt. And so my race gets cut short. I went out there with no crew or anything, so the time limit was just getting me because of, the pain. And so I'm sitting here talking to someone about my story. And, we go off about our business. And the guy I was telling my story was talking to another woman who just dropped and her partner. And we're about 15, 20 yards away. And I overhear the conversation. And the guy that I told my story to asked her partner, "What do you do for a living?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm an orthopedic surgeon." And so he's like, "All right, cool. What do you do? Like knees, shoulders?" He's like, "No, I'm a specialize in the spine, and especially with long-term pain patients." So he's like, "Oh, you need to talk to that dude."
Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Brandon Clark.
Exactly. So we start talking, and he's like telling him my story, and he's asking all these questions. He's like, "Do you have a transitional vertebrae?" And I'm like, "I don't know what the hell that is, so I'm gonna say no." And he's like, "Okay." And we start talking more. He's like, "Well, send me all your imaging that you have." And he's out of Atlanta. And he's like, "I'll look at it." And I was like, "All right, I'll mail it, as soon as I get home tomorrow." And I'm like, "Well, hey, I got some imaging on my phone, like x-rays and stuff." I was like, "Can you look it from that?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I pulled that up and he's like, "Yeah, dude, this is what you have." So he pulled everything up on my x-ray, zoomed it in. And basically I have a thing called Bertolotti's syndrome. And it's a genetic condition. So 10 damn doctors missed this throughout all this. But essentially, my sacral joints and my spine are fusing together naturally. So my hip bones and spine are just, growing together. And he has the same condition. And that's why he was, on point with it. So I sent him my imaging. A week later, he comes back and he's like, "Yeah, dude," gave me all the, stuff on it. He's like, "This is what you have." But it's such progressed that he didn't think that that was what was causing the pain, because there's 4 classifications. There's like 1A and B, 2AB, 3AB, and 4A and B. And A and B is the sides. So A is you have one side, B you have both sides. So class 2 is what usually causes the most chronic pain. And I was a 3B. So both sides were fused together. And you have holes in between some spots in your hip joints and your sac joints and stuff where your nerves pass through. So again, all those are closing in, right? Your bones just growing together. So that causes a bunch of issues. Even he told me, like, he got paralyzed for 2 months building a little pallet wall for his garden because he just overdid it one day. So that's the type of stuff this condition can actually do. Him taking some pallets and putting them up as a little fence for his garden paralyzed his doctor for 2 months. And so I was like, "Oh, great. That's what I get to look forward to, But so, yeah, so he gave me that diagnosis and he's like, "All right, go meet up with your surgeon," and all that. Well, I went to him yesterday, finally got in after the holidays. Everything's kind of booked up. And yeah, he confirmed it. So I got to go get an MRI and stuff, but there's not much we can do. There was a procedure that probably would have got the pain solved, but my fusions took that out. So that's where they have to go completely through that specific place where I had my fusion done to do what they need to do. So since I have all that hardware in there, they can't do it. So that took away. So I had a ton of hope in October, like a ton of hope that I thought I was going to be able to get some relief and I'd be over this. And then a week later, all that hope disappeared. So that put me into another major kind of depression at the end of last year. And then also coming off of such a big accomplishment with Big Al's, that's another thing. If you don't unpack it, that can lead into a little bit of a lull mentally, because you go do something so big, it's hard to just go back to work Monday morning.
Yeah, now
Like,
what kind of thing.
exactly,
Hmm.
right? Like, I want to go do that again. I
Hmm.
don't want to go sit in front of a computer and work all day. And so last year was extremely tough, on that. And that took a lot of work. But yeah, so yesterday I went to the doctor though. So I have MRI scheduled, and there might be a few little things we can do, like some shots to get some temporary pain relief and all that. But yeah, man, it's a lot of people go on disability with this. It's a lot of people end up in wheelchairs in this condition. I've joined a Facebook group related to this condition, and people are ecstatic when they walk daily. Like they have no clue that someone like me is out there doing what I'm doing with this condition. So yeah, I finally got that diagnosis after 10 years. 10 years of nothing, but I'm kind of still back to square one as there's nothing really to do. There might be some like hip fusions and stuff in the future, but I think I'm so naturally fused already that I don't have to worry about that. So, there's like no mobility in my hips and spine, which again is not a good thing if you're out there running, especially climbing like I am. So yeah, man, I'm at a massive, massive disadvantage every time that I step foot on a trail. But I wouldn't trade it. I love it.
The world needs to hear this story, man. They really do, and I can't thank you enough for coming on here. And I started the podcast off, I think, with I know a little bit about your story, and what I knew is that you suffered from chronic back issues, but I had no
Yeah.
idea that it was to this extent. I know it's probably not the easiest thing to talk about, um, but you performed, and this will absolutely help so many people that listen. Before we get out of here, Brandon, is there like a final message that you have for people that are just going through a tough time, man? You've been rock bottom. I mean, I know that you're probably dying to get off here so you can stand up and stretch out a little bit because, I mean, I know you're in pain. But is there like a final message that you have for the listeners that are just going through something difficult? And, I mean, if you can do this shit, man, with your circumstances, there's just simply, in my opinion, no fucking excuse for
Yeah.
anybody out there not to improve their situation.
Yeah, that is hard for me to see too when I see people not taking advantage of their opportunities like that. Because like I said, I've grown 4 businesses while dealing with this. I've ran, the all the races and all that. But everything comes back to 2 things, and that's making forward progress and getting 1% better. And if you can live your life by those 2 things, you're going to be successful at whatever you do. And the 1% better, we're going to have the days where we go -5%. Like we're just going to have those days. We can't be perfect. We can't grow every single day. But the thing is, if you just get up and continue to try to live by that, you're going to make those improvements. And when the year is over, you're going to be much further ahead than you would have been any other way. And so, again, if you just go by 1% better every single day, like I said, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, relationships, whatever you can do to just be 1% better, that's all you got to do.
Excellent, man. I appreciate it. Before I get you out, where can people, I know you're not incredibly active, but where can people follow you online just to maybe keep up on your story and your what you got going on over there?
Yeah, you could get me on Instagram at Run That BMC, and you can find me on my website, Brandon Michael Clark, and I'll have all my socials, email, anything like that. If anyone needs to reach out.
Excellent. Dude, this was truly like one of my I say this all the time, but like I guess I'm just blessed with getting fucking awesome people on here, man, and I can't believe I've waited this long to reach out. So, Eric, I know you're listening to this every second of it. So, thank you for mentioning Brandon again because this is freaking awesome, man. And I know that, my goal is just to help anybody that we can on this platform. And this is one of the big, big episodes in that regard. So, thank you, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. Thank you for Eric for getting me in touch with you and all that as well. And again, I hope I can, help anyone going through that. And, if anyone needs to reach out that's going through the same or anything, I'm here to listen, here to talk, anything I can do to help anybody. Because, again, I know how hard it is to go through this stuff. So anything I can do to help anybody, I'm always for it.
Awesome. Listen, man, stay on the line, and then I'll get you out. Thanks, brother.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.